Welcome to the Week 16 PFF Live pregame show. If you're still alive in your fantasy leagues, we've got you covered. We're going to hit every single game. And, of course, we're going to talk spreads, totals, and player props here. For the next hour and a half, I've got Eric, I've got Sam here live with me in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ian Hartitz is going to join us from Columbus, Ohio. Never in my entire life have I needed Ian more than I need him here today to help me figure out who to start and who to sit in my fantasy championship, which, of course, I'm not freaking out about in any way, shape, or form. We're going to talk about every single game. Some games matter less than others. We'll talk about the playoff implications of those. And we'll start with the Giants and the Ravens. So the Ravens now, they have to win their last two games and get a little bit of help. Enter the New York Football Giants. To me, this is a 10-point spread. Ravens favored by 10, total of 44. This has the markings of a Ravens slaughter, right?
I think so. I mean, I think with Daniel Jones playing but not being as healthy as he normally is, that's a really big blow for the Giants. Their defense, has played okay over the last few weeks. They kind of limited Cleveland a little bit last week, but Lamar and the Ravens just present such a challenge for all these teams. And obviously the Ravens know that they can't leave anything to chance here. A loss would really put them.
They'd be in real trouble.
Real trouble here. So obviously Baltimore to win. I think the numbers may be a bit steep here, but a
bit steep.
They're favored by a double digits for a reason.
I mean, if Daniel Jones is 100%,
right?
What shot do they have?
That's been basically the story for the Giants, right? When Daniel Jones is there, he plays pretty well most of the time and kind of gives them a fighting chance. But the second he got hurt with that hamstring, they haven't been the same team. Whether it's Colt McCoy, whether it's Daniel Jones trying to play without being able to move around at all. Like, the guy has questionable pocket presence at the best of times. When you take away his ability to react and actually move away from pressure, it's just game over. And in particular in this game, Yannick Ngakoue has been on fire the last couple of weeks. Poor old Andrew Thomas was turning a corner, then ran into a randomly rejuvenated Hassan Reddick, Myles Garrett, and now it's Yannick Ngakoue. So, yeah, without a 100% healthy Daniel Jones, this feels like it could be, a slaughter.
I'm going to ask you about Lamar Jackson a little bit. 9 games with a PFF passing grade of 75 plus last year. He's had 3 this year. It's been definitely a year of regression for him. Have you started to see things that make you feel like he's getting back to 2019, or are you still thinking, yeah, he needs to go a little ways to get back to where he was?
I mean, I think overall the offense has started to look a little bit more like 2019, but I don't know if it's them or if it's just a case of what they faced recently has allowed them to dominate on the ground, which is where everything is built from, right? Lamar Jackson is able to make these wide open throws when they're wide open. When teams don't have to concern themselves about the run threat as much, it's easier to defend everything.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this team struggle on the outside. Marquise Brown has not been the player that we thought he'd be in year 2. Miles Boykin hasn't done, the things that we thought he could do. And the tight ends.
What exactly did we think Miles Boykin could do?
I mean, he was a guy that, was a sleeper, right? I mean, he was somebody who could make plays.
Still sleeping.
Yeah,
apparently.
Still sleeping. And Andrews has not gotten the layups that he got a year ago, which has really hurt them. I also think Lamar Jackson being banged up with a knee injury hurt him for a while. And just every single time this has happened to a quarterback, the league is caught up in a year or less. So
their offensive line, regression. Their offensive line took a serious hit. You lose a Hall of Famer, Marshall Yanda.
Several serious hits.
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley, the best left tackle in the NFL per PFF grading last year. The guy was an absolute monster. And a team that's predicated around how great and mobile that offensive line is takes a big hit. The Giants, to me, feel like a great bounce-back spot. Softness of the interior of that defense. I'm not worried about it.
Interesting inactives today, obviously. Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters, 2 guys who, I think help that defense be less fragile than most defenses, but they're out today. If Daniel Jones is actually healthy, there might be some openings there and might give you some pause about laying the number with the Ravens.
Okay, interesting. Let's go to Ian here. A lot of questions about who you can trust in the Baltimore backfield. Let's go to J.K. Dobbins. Obviously the most talented guy back there. Mark Ingram inactive. So Gus Edwards is really his only competition. Where do you have Dobbins? Who are some guys that you're starting him over this week?
Yeah, he's my RB12, and we've really seen this now for the past month. And we had that annoying game where both Dobbins and Ingram were out because of COVID. But other than that, it really has been the J.K. Dobbins show in Baltimore, as it should be. He has been their best running back all season long. Because of that, RB12 on the week, I'm starting him ahead of Mike Davis, Chris Carson, Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt. Not getting super crazy, still have Jonathan Taylor, Eckler, Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb, and some of those guys ahead of him. But, you look, 4 straight games with a touchdown. Now again, in the game against the Giants, where I think we're all in agreement that the Ravens should be able to, establish that positive game script, be able to run the ball ball their heart's desire. I think it's setting up for another game with 12 to 15 total touches. For anyone's idea of one of the more talented rookie backs in the league, I think Dobbins continues to cash in as a true RB1 at Fantasyland.
What about any of these receivers? You mentioned Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters, or Eric mentioned that, them being out. Does that give you any hope for a team playing from behind, maybe a Darius Slayton or someone like that? Evan Ingram?
They've just been so brittle throwing the ball all year long. I mean, it's almost like the best parts of this Giants offense was Daniel Jones himself running the ball. He's been like a poor man's Kyler Murray this year. Before he got hurt, going into Week 13, Daniel Jones was 24th among all QBs in fantasy points from purely passing production. Like Slayton, Shepard, Ingram, Tate, like I'm not hating on any of these guys necessarily, but I just don't think this passing game has shown nearly enough to earn the benefit of the doubt with the fantasy season on the line. Having Peters and Smith out's fine, but this is still one of the most blitz-happy defenses in the league. I think it was Sam that was saying that, Daniel Jones, even at his best, doesn't exactly have the best pocket presence out there. You take away the guy's mobility and potentially add some more pressure than usual. Problematic, guys. Giants, Jets, only two teams in the league with a pressure rate of at least 40% allowed. So, no, I'm staying away from everybody in this Giants offense. It's too crowded, and with the main, engine of the offense banged up, just stay away.
Alrighty, I have two props, both Lamar Jackson oriented. I love Lamar Jackson in this game. 1.5 passing touchdowns. Plus 140. We talk about this all the time. When you get a plus number for a prop, either an over or an under, you should think about it. 1.5 passing touchdowns for Lamar Jackson, and then 194.5 passing yards is minus 120. Lamar Jackson gets it back on track in a game they have to win and get some help. The Ravens are going to blow them out. Let's bet on Lamar Jackson. All right, Falcons and the Chiefs. Chiefs 10.5-point favorite. Total 53 honestly feels a little bit low. The Chiefs are number 1 team. Falcons are 16, so about a 12.7-point difference in terms of our power rating. So that would make it seem like we're leaning towards the Chiefs. However, they have not covered one of these big numbers in forever. They're like 6-0 in their last 6, 0-6 against the spread. So I'm going to ride with the Falcons and the over. I'm not going to watch the game. I'm going to cover my eyes. What are you going to do?
As a Chiefs fan, I'm going to watch the game, but I do think the Falcons are the side here, and the reason being is that their passing game can compete. Like it feels to me a lot like the Raiders against the Chiefs, right? Where their defense isn't very good, but in their best game they can sort of go toe to toe as far as scoring back and forth. I know Julio's out, but the Chiefs are going to be without some key defenders. I mean, both of their starting linebackers are out, including the guy that calls the plays. Frank Clark is in. Frank Clark is going to play, but he was kind of messed up all week. So, and he hasn't been good, right? So he's not going to get the pass rush there. And for Kansas City, like, I know that the win, they need one win to get the 1 seed. This isn't the sense of urgency necessarily that a game, so let's say in week 17 would be with 1 win to get you that 1 seed.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the over for much of the same reasons. I think Atlanta can kind of go toe-to-toe to a certain extent. Julio's out, but every time Julio's been out, Calvin Ridley goes off. They just seem to bump everyone one up the depth chart, and they're still pretty good at the top.
Olamide Zaccheaus.
Right. Matt Ryan has a top 10 PFF grade, and he's the one guy in that top 10, maybe Brady as well, whose passer rating doesn't quite sync with their PFF grade, right? He's a little bit underrated because of that. Like, compared with everybody else around him, his passer rating should be about 10, 15 points higher. Given the way he's played, I think he's still going to be able to carve up Kansas City's secondary.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Matt Ryan, our 9th highest graded quarterback. I think most people would assume he's outside of the top 10. Matt Ryan continues to be a really good quarterback. It just stinks that the Falcons can't seem to put it together in any other shape or form or phase of that team. Tyreek Hill, questionable for this game. He is going to play. Of course, he has been a TD machine. You would expect against the Falcons that there will be opportunities for him to get deep if he can play. Travis Kelce, of course, has been a monster. You're starting all of those guys. So the question for Ian Hartitz is this. No Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Le'Veon Bell. He's carried people to fantasy championships in the past. Now, it may have been like 5 years ago. What are the chances that Le'Veon Bell does it again today? Where do you have him ranked this week?
He's a solid RB2. I think we can kind of treat him like we've been treating Clyde Edwards-Helaire over the past few weeks. It's unfortunate that we have, the NFL's best offense in Kansas City and they can't have a fantasy RB1. But, Patrick Mahomes, he's been airing the ball out as much as he wants all season long. Not expecting that to change, particularly in this cake matchup for him and those wide receivers. But we can feel good about Le'Veon here. We go back to the game where Clyde Edwards-Helaire was active but ended up not playing emergency only. Le'Veon led the way with a 52% snap rate. Darrell Williams was still involved, but Le'Veon had 14 combined carries and targets. 6. Darryl was only down there at 8. So that was kind of even. But then you look at last week and look, Le'Veon 16 combined carries and targets. Darryl Williams only 3. So they've actually grown more and more just comfortable, I guess is the right word, with Le'Veon as their pass down back, coming over, learning a new system halfway through the year, pass protection, all that stuff that us fantasy footballers usually don't have time to concern ourselves with, obviously matters for a guy getting out there and having some playing time. So honestly, last week we were asking the same kind of question with Leonard Fournette. I feel far better about Le'Veon Bell in this spot because we have seen him active, playing more often in recent weeks, and to his credit, I think playing a little bit better recently as opposed to when he first got there. So Le'Veon, I'm playing him ahead of David Johnson, ahead of the Cowboys and Washington football team running backs. I still got Chris Carson and Melvin Gordon and even Kareem Hunt ahead of him, but rock solid top 20 option at the position.
I may have to think about Le'Veon Bell now. I can't believe that statement is coming out of my mouth in the year 2020, but here we are.
Don't do it.
Maybe my favorite prop of the entire weekend is this one. Well, actually, there were a couple yesterday that I really liked, like Tom Brady over 2.5 passing touchdowns. That was a cinch. But Patrick Mahomes over 2.5 passing touchdowns, minus 120. I don't know if you've watched the Falcons play football this year, but they are not ones to dissuade teams from throwing the ball deep often.
Good thing you're not going to watch the game, because if they hand this ball to Le'Veon Bell,
yes, no, that is a great
in the red
point.
Zone,
that is a great point.
Unbelievable.
However, look, Aaron Rodgers gets to play in primetime tonight. Patrick Mahomes has to put up some crazy stats to keep himself, above Aaron Rodgers in that MVP race. So over 2.5 passing touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. Feel great about that. Also, motivation. Ryan Fitzpatrick with the no look. Patrick Mahomes wants to put on a show here. And then Matt Ryan, no interceptions, is plus 145 in some spots. He's an underrated quarterback. Take him not to throw an interception at plus 145. You can go to PFF.com, by the way, and see all of the props that we like and don't like with the props tool. All right, let's go to Browns-Jets. Why? We're contractually obligated to talk about this game. The Browns wide receivers, however, contractually obligated not to show up to this game because they're all in the COVID protocol. The Jets, obviously fresh off that huge win that took them from the first pick to the second pick. Now, they're not in danger of getting to the third pick because our Cincinnati Bengals made sure of that by beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Jets are a 6.5-point underdog at home to the wide receiverless Browns. It's going to be 38, moderate win, so just cold. It sets up for this Browns running game. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to take the under 44.5.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as you see on the graphic, that's where it's going, right? I mean, and that makes a lot of sense. The Browns have played 3 games in this sort of elements before this year. All 3 of those games went under, and 2 of them comfortably so. That's really, I think that's the perfect game for them this week, is to, win 20-6 the way that they did against the Giants, get out of the game healthy, get out of the game without exposing much of Baker Mayfield. Every single team in the AFC except for the Dolphins needs some help to get in the playoffs. And so I think the Browns, as well coached as they are going to take care of business today. It's why I can't take the number with the Jets, even though I think numerically it has some value given how valuable wide receiver is.
Yeah, generally I want no part of betting on this game, but I'm fascinated to see it. Like, anytime a team rolls into a game with basically no wide receivers, it's got to be entertaining to watch, particularly because, we've been talking about how Baker Mayfield needs, the next test, right? The next thing that's going to be a challenge, and to see if he is really playing better or if he's just a product of some crappy defenses recently. This isn't the test we were expecting, but it's kind of an interesting one anyway.
Sam, interestingly, I want to ask your opinion on this. So, this season was Mayfield's big. It's the corner year, right? Is whether or not the Browns sign him to an extension or not. Are we a little bit unlucky in the sense that he has 4 games that are weather games that are just kind of throw out the data games? Like, the Browns kind of got unlucky in this situation. I know they're winning. They won 10 games. They're probably going to make the playoffs. All this, but in some ways, it was a lot better of a year for a team like the Jets and a team like the Bills to actually find out that their quarterback is sort of either good or bad. The Browns, I think it's a grade of incomplete. Better than last year, but a grade of incomplete. And having all these games with all these weird situations only muddies that in my estimation.
Before you answer, they're making the playoffs. They're re-signing him. Just saying that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think your point is valid, right? I think overall, it's extremely difficult to work out what level of improvement we've gotten from Baker Mayfield between the weather games, between the slate of incredibly crappy defenses he's played. He really hasn't had many tests at all this season. So, sure, he's been better than he was earlier in the year when he was a train wreck against any kind of good defense. But how much better, I don't think anybody knows yet.
These teams that have to make these quarterback decisions might have lucked out because of the pandemic, because the salary cap for a couple of years is going to be small enough where they could possibly coax these quarterbacks into taking deals worth $25 million a year. If they can't do that, right, like Dallas isn't going to be able to do that with Dak. So they're screwed. But like a team with maybe a quarterback more in that purgatory range like Cleveland might actually end up lucking out because of the pandemic.
You actually make a really good point. Do you think that Baker, because of the progressive commercials that he does, can afford to take a slightly lower salary?
I mean, Mahomes isn't. He took a pretty modest deal for the first 5 years, right? And
bless him.
Yeah.
Mahomes, a pretty modest deal. That's the point of the season that we have reached. Not wrong, but Mahomes slightly better than Baker Mayfield. I will say this about the Browns. This has a very Jared Goff, LA Rams feel. Sean McVay comes in, brings a dramatic switch in how they're running their offense. It looks a lot better. They signed Jared Goff long term. It turns out maybe you want that deal back. Anyways, we're worried about Week 16 now. And so let's bring in Ian, because no wide receivers. We've talked about the Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, two-headed monster this whole year. Kareem Hunt is now their best wide receiver. So what does that do for him, certainly in a PPR league, and then maybe even if you're in a non-PPR league? Where is Kareem Hunt ending up on your rankings now?
Yeah, I boosted him up a good 7-8 spots with this news because now they should finally be forced to use him as a true wide receiver. This is not something new for Kareem Hunt. He spent at least 12 snaps per game last season once he came back from suspension in the slot or out wide. Unfortunately, this year they haven't done that for more than 6 snaps in a single game. So was literally doing this twice as often in 2019 as he's been asked to in 2020. But there might not be a running back more capable of lining up as a receiver in the league than Kareem Hunt. He is averaging 0.5 missed forced tackles per reception when lined up in the slot or out wide. Turns out, getting him the ball in space against cornerbacks, pretty hard guy to tackle out there. So already the PPR RB17 on the season, and look, some of that is flawed from Chubb being out and things of that nature. But I am firing him up as that upside RB2 ahead of guys like David Johnson, the Cowboys running backs, the football team's running backs, even Le'Veon Bell. Basically, if you have that 3-down workload, I'm going to chase that just overall opportunity. But Hunt is the cream of the crop when it comes to just the top kind of committee backs. Chubb's going to get fed, but for once, I don't think we have to worry as much about Hunt's touches as well. Get him in fantasy football lineups of all shapes and sizes.
And that does it for the fantasy relevant players in this game. That's why you need player props. And that's why the PFF props tool is here to help you out in this Week 16. Nick Chubb, 8.5 receiving yards over. Why? Because there are no wide receivers in Cleveland that they can throw the ball to. So Nick Chubb, by default, going to catch a pass or two, go over 8.5 yards. And then I had to give you a quarterback rushing prop. It's an obligation. And Baker Mayfield with a little scamper in New York, over 9.5 rushing yards. You love to see it. All right, we are about 60, 70 minutes to kick off. We've got stacks on stacks coming your way. The 3 stacks that our buddy Ben Brown loves this week to help you cash out in some DFS tournaments as we close out the 2020 regular season. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Mike Renner here, lead draft analyst, going to take you through some defensive position rankings. We went offense last week. Let's kick it to the defense side of the ball. Start at the cornerback position, where at number 5 we have Asante Samuel Jr. of Florida State. Their defense wasn't great this year, but don't blame Asante Samuel. He is undersized but freakishly quick and athletic. A 46.2 passer rating in his coverage allowed this season. At number 4, it's South Carolina cornerback J.C. Horn, a decidedly different body type than Asante Samuel Jr. 6'1", 205, big, physical. His tape against Auburn, where he had 2 picks and 5 pass breakups, probably the best tape of any cornerback we saw this fall. At number 3, it's Clemson cornerback Darion Kendrick. Switched from wide receiver to cornerback early in his career. You love to see the guys make that transition. Only allowed 105 yards all season long so far. At number 2, it's Alabama quarterback Patrick Surtain. Yes, a lot of bloodlines on this list here. 84.6 Coverage grade as a sophomore, 86.3 this year, and only allowed 18 of 43 targets for 215 yards. He is a lockdown, long cornerback teams will covet. And at number 1, hasn't played a snap this fall. It's former Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley. He opted out, but he's 6'2", 207, reportedly runs in the 4.3s, and earned a 90.5 coverage grade back as a redshirt sophomore in 2019.
Every week, our good friend Ben Brown writes one of my favorite articles on PFF.com. He gives you stacks that have relatively highly owned players, but together the composition makes them a low-owned stack in a particular game. He does about 6 or 7. We're going to highlight our favorite 3 here. Of course, you go to PFF.com, get an Edge subscription, and read to your heart's content. We're going to start with, of course, the Chiefs and the Falcons game, and we're going to look at Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, paired then with Travis Kelce. I know you love Travis Kelce. What about that Falcons side do you like?
Yeah, I mean, they're going after a young corner. Now, L'Jarius Sneed has had a really good set of games here in that new role. But that's been against some teams that maybe can't necessarily go after him as much. The New Orleans Saints last week didn't have Michael Thomas, who plays inside a lot. And so I think people might be fading Russell Gage based upon that information that the Chiefs have been pretty good at that nickel spot for the past few weeks. So go against that, of course, if you want to win. Obviously, Travis Kelce's a free space here. Atlanta, I think, is better at linebacker in coverage than they are at corner. But again, you need, if you're going to win these tournaments, to go against conventional wisdom. And I think Kelce is probably matchup proof. So go with him here in a game that's going to be pretty high scoring. And I think in any permutation of this, the Falcons are going to be throwing all the time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce lines up at wide receiver more than he does at tight end. So the chances to get him matched up against a whole assortment of players that can't cover on the Atlanta Falcons team is going to be there. One of the games this afternoon that I think most people are very excited about, the Eagles and the Cowboys. Jalen Hurts, Zach Ertz, and CeeDee Lamb. We've talked a lot about Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he's a guy who gives you some rushing potential, but has thrown to his tight ends a pretty fair amount. Of course, that's one of the 2 spots that they really have in Philadelphia that they can take advantage of with Ertz and Goddard, and then CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I mean, they are going to get Darius Slay back, but that's going to probably look at like Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So Lamb is probably the guy you want to look at against the Philadelphia Eagles. And we talked about Lamar Jackson earlier this week. Where did he have one of his bigger games running the football? It was against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have a bunch of marshmallows playing a defensive tackle for them. And so not only with his arm, but I think with his legs, you're going to see Jalen Hurts put up some points. Goddard is the younger tight end. People seem to like him more in DFS. Hurts has been throwing to both guys. Give Ertz the chance here in your stack.
Yeah, the Cowboys have been really bad defensively and are without Leighton Vander Esch today. So another opportunity for them to take advantage of the middle of that defense. Last one here, Deshaun Watson, Brandon Cooks, and T. Higgins. Of course, Watson has been without basically every valuable player he could have had to start the season. So now it's Brandon Cooks and Kiki QT, and then, of course, T. Higgins on the other side against a pretty bad Texans defense.
Yeah, no Tyler Boyd for Cincinnati. He's been kind of the guy that's been he was on the advertisement for Monday Night Football last week, and of course went out with a concussion. So T. Higgins, I think, takes that spot. Ryan Finley's not very good, but the Houston Texans defense is, I think, good enough for this to be a sneaky play here as far as a fantasy matchup. Cooks has been the number 1 receiver when he's been out there, especially with Stills out and as well as Fuller with the suspension. So this is one that I think no one's going to be watching this game. Any sort of like action players or action junkies are not going to be putting players from this game in their lineup. So you could possibly find some value here.
Finding value here. What we're trying to do, go to PFF.com. You can check out that whole article, plus a bunch of other great DFS content to make sure that you're ready to rock for Week 16. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. We've got the Bears and the Jags. Now, the Bears control their own destiny. How could they possibly mess this up? We'll find out. Be back in about 60. the PFF live pregame show for Week 16. We'll be right back. And while we're waiting, I'm going to help you with your fantasy start-sit decisions because if you're still playing, these really matter. So we're going to start with the quarterbacks. I'm going to use the PFF consensus among our 4 rankers. Of course, you can see all of this with the PFF Edge subscription at pff.com. Plus, you get all of the premium content, and it carries through, obviously, with great draft coverage and everything else. But you care about fantasy right now, so here we go. I'm going to go through the top 20. Of course, if you log in, you can see all of their projections in each individual and strength of schedule as well. So here we go. Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson at 5, Aaron Rodgers at 6, followed by Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield at 10. Then Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Tua, Mitch Trubisky, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton, Matt Stafford, poor guy suffered an injury. Jared Goff is at 20. 21, Cam Newton. 22, Ben Roethlisberger. And 23 is Drew Lock. Go to pff.com, get yourself PFF Edge subscription, see all of these rankings and a lot more. And now, back to the PFF pregame show.
Alrighty, we're back. About 60 minutes to kick off in Week 16. We were just talking off air about the Browns-Jets games. Why? I have no idea. And Eric Eager brought up a really good point. You can find Kareem Hunt, 3.5 receptions. 3.5! Find me one player on Cleveland that they're going to throw the ball to over Kareem Hunt. You can't. 3.5 receptions for Kareem Hunt. Would you say you don't have a mortgage? Why?
So I can bet this one.
There you go. All right, we're going to move on to Bengals and Texans. Why? I don't know. There's some interesting things here, including Deshaun Watson. The poor guy has put up a top 5, top 3, really, performance from a quarterback this year, according to PFF grading. He's been absolutely amazing. Made a huge jump this year, despite the fact that the rest of his team has literally dropped like flies or been sent away literally for nothing.
Yeah.
They're facing the Bengals. They're now a 7.5-point favorite. This tells you how bad the Bengals are. Total 45.5. I can't lay that many points with a team as bad as the Texans.
Yeah.
However, I think Deshaun Watson goes off in this game.
Yeah, you have indoors, which is big. You also have a bad defense on both sides, which I think...
Letdown spot for the Bengals.
Letdown spot for the Bengals after being...
They won the Super Bowl.
My concern here is that you're going to be in a situation where, kind of like you were in yesterday betting the over in Tampa versus Detroit, where one of the teams just doesn't show up and you're praying that one of the teams can get over
The Bengals
themselves.
have their coaches in this game.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The Lions lost their coaching staff and their quarterback within 5 minutes of the game starting.
Yeah, the Bengals don't have a quarterback, and the other spot is questionable, to be quite honest with you. So,
Sam, you're not passing on this game. What do you think?
Bet Houston in a teaser. It's one of the good remaining teasers left on the board.
Who are you teasing it with?
Well, the game we're talking about next.
Stay tuned.
I do agree with you that Deshaun Watson is going to go off in this game. I mean, he has been incredible overall, but he's been particularly incredible when he's been kept clean this season. Has a PFF grade of 95
Is that good?
from a clean pocket. A passer rating of 120 despite having no receivers to work with. And the Bengals have the lowest pressure rate in the entire NFL. The one threat they have to rush the passer is going up against a pretty good player. So Deshaun Watson basically should have all day.
The Mike Zimmer legacy, right? Cincinnati, no pressure. Minnesota, no pressure. What a God's gift to offenses.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Let's go to Ian, get us back on track here. Ian, there's a couple of questions that I have. The first is the Texans receivers, because I'm sitting here, there's a lot of injured receivers, a lot of guys that have been suspended, like, I don't know, Will Fuller. I just ripped my heart out. It's okay. What are you doing in terms of, say, Brandon Cooks, and then maybe a guy like Kiki QT, who, when healthy, has been a guy that Deshaun Watson has really liked to throw to?
Yeah, nothing, twist that Will Fuller dagger even deeper than seeing this home Week 16 spot against the Bengals. But it is what it is. Kiki, Cooks, even Chat Hansen, all these guys I think are viable just darts where, hey, I would hope that if you made it to your fantasy championship, you're not necessarily relying on these guys. But got a lot of start-sit questions this morning with some of these wide receiver 4 types. And if you can have a wide receiver attached to a Deshaun Watson-led offense, those are the guys you should be looking at in a tiebreaker. So, look, Brandon Cooks, he's a legit wide receiver 2 for me. Wide receiver 15 on the entire week. Cootie and Hanson aren't necessarily in my top 30, but they're guys that should, again, be prioritized over similarly ranked players because we have Deshaun Watson, as Sam said, facing the number 32 defense in pressure rate, expecting all kinds of points from this Texans passing game. That's really it, though. I mean, David Johnson, okay, with Duke sideline again, he should be getting a good amount of run. He's an RB2, but nobody on Cincinnati you should really be prioritizing here. Giovanni Bernard, 2 touchdowns against the Steelers last week. Look, the reason why we love Giovanni Bernard is because he's this theoretical scat back. He had 1 target all of last week. Now, 1 for a touchdown, kudos to him. I just think we already saw, the quote-unquote best version of this Bengals offense, which was still pretty bad. Don't go back to well and point chasing on an offense that has been brutal ever since Joe Burrow got lost for the season.
Yeah, you're going to mention Giovanni Bernard. That is the guy that I have scars. I want nothing to do with Giovanni Bernard whatsoever going forward. However, the Texans passing game is something I do want to be a part of. And I'll say this. Deshaun Watson, there's a prop that I have liked for a while, which is under 1.5 passing touchdowns for him because people underestimate how good of a runner he is, how often he runs it in, or they run it in from in close. That's plus 145 right now, so I kind of like that. But we just talked about how much Deshaun Watson is going to go off. If you can find his completions prop, which I see at about 22.5, if you can get that anywhere near even money, we show a little bit of value on the PFF props tool, and the PFF props tool doesn't have a binary variable for is Deshaun Watson ready to go off in this game. And I believe that Deshaun Watson is ready to go off in this game. So we're going to roll with that one. Deshaun Watson over 22.5 completions here. Remember, no Will Fuller. She's going to have to dink and dunk it down the field to beat the Cincinnati Bengals, which obviously everyone believes that they will. All right, the Chicago Bears, they now control their own destiny. Tweets going out about how Mitchell Trubisky is playing his way into a contract. Bears fans, I'm sorry. The Jaguars are 8.5-point underdogs, total of 46.5. The Bears need to win the game. I will take the Jags to cover.
Yeah, I don't hate the Jags here. I do like the Bears in a tease them with Houston. 2 kind of ugly games with the favorites. I think in the case of Houston, will win, and I think in the case of the Bears, will be coaxed into winning by their opponent. So neither of these teams is particularly good, but the Bears do have a pretty good defense. Mike Lennon,
no Jalen Johnson though.
Yeah, I think Mike Lennon is being put in this game. Players don't tank, right? Like football's too violent to not play hard, but teams can tank by playing the wrong players. And the Jags are playing the wrong player in this game at the quarterback position. No James Robinson.
Hold on. You think Mike Lennon is worse than Gardner Minshew? Incredible. Who knew?
He's not.
I mean, there's no way that you can look at those 2 guys play quarterback and be like, yeah, Mike Lennon gives us a better chance to win.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, right? He might not be materially better or worse, but I think he's an awful lot less dangerous in terms of accidentally winning a game and taking you in the wrong direction. The key is that they are without James Robinson, right? Their one shining light on offense isn't playing. It's Mike Glennon getting this done by himself through the air against an actual defense. I don't care if the Bears have Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback, which is its own problem. They're a better team. They have something to play for. They should comfortably win.
I think the only way the Jags win this game is if Trubisky is so awful early in the game and turns the ball over enough where they're down 21-3 based upon short fields and that kind of thing. I think in almost any other instance, let's say the game's tied at halftime, they're just putting Mitch in a glass case and running the football and grinding it out till they get field goals, right? Like that to me is why I think the teaser here is probably a good, a good play, as well as Jags plus. This game's going to be pretty condensed, I think. Jags stink, but the Bears can't extend on a team, even bad teams.
Which is interesting because the Bears do have some really good players. Like Allen Robinson didn't make the Pro Bowl.
Wait a sec. Good players without a quarterback doesn't lead.
Yeah, it's really shocking. Khalil Mack, PFF's second highest graded defender at 92.4.
Still really hard for him to live up to being 3 or 4 players in a trade as well as in a contract. But yeah, he's good for one player.
Right, exactly. That's literally my exact point, which is you trade all this stuff for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack has been fantastic. Allen Robinson has been amazing. And yet, Mitch Trubisky, 62.7 PFF grade, 32nd this year, maybe not playing himself into that contract.
The future owner of a new contract. Congratulations, Mitch.
If they, what will Bears fans do? Bears fans will riot in the streets. Our friend Robert Mays will be.
The volume of them that are on my timeline that are in favor of the new Mitchell Trubisky contract is blowing my mind.
Yeah, but your Twitter following is a special kind of weird.
Yeah, but usually I've muted all the ones that are the real.
Well, we have to do our PFF forecast fake trophy show, and the fake trophy for Bears fans is you extended your quarterback. That's the fake. You got Khalil Mack. Look, hang a banner. Yeah. Hang another banner.
Really? That's a good point. Traded for Khalil Mack, has Allen Robinson, extends rookie quarterback.
Hang a banner.
Confirms all priors. Again, Ian Hartitz will bring us back on track here. The David Montgomery season has been one to marvel at because we made fun of all of the comparisons early on. And now he's a guy that's locked in. He's a top 5 guy for you right this week. And in a week where maybe you did pick up James Robinson early on, he's not playing. Talk about David Montgomery and what you're doing if you don't have James Robinson, who you might be able to put in there.
Yeah, life comes at you fast, man. If you'll take a minute to look around, you'll see Montgomery's the PPR RB6 on the freaking season. He's just been getting fed really ever since Tariq Cohen went down, just this massive 3-down workload. And the results, once the schedule has softened up for him over these past 4 weeks, PPR RB6, RB1, RB6, RB2 most recently. So Montgomery, legit top 5 option at the position with another cake matchup on deck. We saw last week, if the Bears can give them the ball 30 times and win comfortably, that is what they're going to do. Also wouldn't write off Mitch Trubisky if you're desperate at the QB position. He has at least given us the 2018 ceiling that we saw, with plenty of duds along the way too. But he has 3 performances this year as a top 9 fantasy QB, also 4 performances outside the top 20. Again, this is a boom or bust play, the epitome of that. But Trubisky has at least shown us that 2018 ceiling, even if, I'm not saying he should get a contract. But hey, the Bears, since he's come back under center, you look 25, 30, 36, 33 points. I don't know. I'm not saying the Jaguars are necessarily going to be breaking the streak of them putting up points. So if you are in DFS and you find yourself not having the price tag to get up to Dave Montgomery, similar to what we were saying last week, with the Titans facing the Lions, I have a hard time seeing this Bears offense getting completely shut down by a Jaguar. So if you're not going the wall with Montgomery, take a look at Trubisky, Cole Kmet at 3K, Darnell Mooney pretty underpriced. Even Allen Robinson is going to be playing through the pain. Just have a hard time seeing this Jaguars defense having much of any success. With James Robinson being sidelined, hopefully you've made some just moves earlier in the week to try to get by. If you do have gun to your head, you need to try to get someone. I do see a Davina Zigbo leading this backfield in touches. A lot of people are on Dario Gumbawale just because he was the backup when Robinson got hurt. We've seen the situation play out, most notably with the Giants when Saquon got injured and Dion Lewis was technically the backup. It was actually Wayne Gallman, even Devontae Freeman as the early down guy. So Dari, one of these scat back primary pass down players. I think a Zigbo, if anyone, is going to be getting those touches. But guys, try to find someone else if you can.
Yeah, that sounds bleak, I guess is the right word. Maybe you're even looking for another backup on another team that has a better chance to score some points because, dear God. All right, let's move on from this game. And let's talk about one of the best games of this entire week, if not the best game. The Indianapolis Colts and the reeling Steelers. I don't know if the Steelers are underrated or overrated right now. They're just not very good. And they are, this line has fluctuated. Colts have been favored by 1.5, Steelers have been favored by 1.5. It really doesn't matter. Anything between 3 on either side, you shouldn't overreact to. It's basically a pick-em in this situation. The Indianapolis Colts are without Anthony Costanzo. A lot is being made of that because of the Steelers' pass rush and TJ Watt, obviously Bud Dupree no longer there. I'm going to roll with the Indianapolis Colts. They're the better team. They have the better quarterback. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the handicap here. The other thing about this game, and we talked about this, Indianapolis cannot beat an elite team. They just kind of don't. Rivers, I think his top end is not good enough anymore. I think their defense is good enough to beat the shit out of bad teams, right? And they're tougher, and their offensive line is a very good group. Their coach is great. All of those things are why Indianapolis is battling for the AFC South title and could be a favorite after today if Tennessee loses. They don't have the goods to beat a great team, though. And that's why, and I think that is what people, when they look at this game from a betting market perspective, they're still thinking of the Steelers as being one of the top teams in the AFC.
Yeah, the team that went 11-0 to start the season. Yeah.
But the point of the matter is, this is the same, Indianapolis can beat Green Bay because they're tougher and they just they make fewer mistakes.
Are you about to say what I think you're going to say?
Steelers are are worse than Green Bay. They're less tough than Green Bay. This is a soft team. From Big Ben's midsection to the offensive and defensive lines, this team is soft, and Indianapolis will kick the shit out of them.
When are we going to talk about the lack of core strength for Big Ben? I don't know. When are we going to have that conversation?
No.
Talk to us about this game.
No team in NFL history has ever started 11-0 and then lost 4 games total. The Steelers are about to lose 4 games straight after starting 11-0. It's insane. And the Bengals game was the really concerning one, right? Washington, it felt like a trap game. That kind of loss was coming anyway. Buffalo
is just better than they are.
Right.
Yeah.
The Bengals game, though, was the get-right spot. Like, the Bengals have been a get-right spot for Baker Mayfield and the Browns twice this season. And Pittsburgh looked worse than they've ever looked before. They have the problem. It's not the opposition. They need to figure out what the hell is going on with that offense. And, as much as the narrative on Rivers is he can't really function under pressure, the numbers don't really back that up. I think it's more of a comfort level for him. It's not when he's pressured. It's when he's decided that he's going to be under pressure in that game is when you get bad Rivers.
I think on offense for Indy, the real limitations is just how important wide receiver is, right? And we've seen it over and over again. We've seen it at the college level too. Wide receiver is the second most valuable position in all of football. If you can get open, even you can overcome bad scheme, you can overcome, and I just don't think Indianapolis' wide receivers for a deep playoff run can do that. I think Frank Reich can scheme it against bad teams and bad defenses, of which the Steelers are trending because of all the injuries they've had. There's no defense that can withstand the injuries that they've had. And so for this game, I think people are undervaluing Indy because we're thinking long-term right now. We're thinking about who can win in the playoffs, and I think Indy's being left out of that conversation. But for this particular game, I think they're the team to pick.
A few weeks ago, the people were grabbing pitchforks when they heard that Ben Roethlisberger was not a top 10 quarterback, not a top 15 quarterback,
MVP.
not a top 20 quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger's PFF grade is 24th. Phillip Rivers is 14th right now, and I think if you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers play, you'll see why that is the case. I mentioned Anthony Costanzo is inactive for Indy. The only inactive for Pittsburgh is Juju Smith-Schuster's pregame logo TikTok dance. But I've heard that you can go to TikTok, download the app, and get more of his featured content there.
They're lying, though. No, inactive is his threat downfield.
That's been inactive for a very long time.
Inactive is his impact on the game.
That's been inactive for a very long time.
Ben's core is also inactive.
Glute strength. When are we going to talk about the importance of glute strength? We'll have to bring Neil Hornsby on for that. Ian Hartitz, Jonathan Taylor. We talked about J.K. Dobbins just a few minutes ago. Clearly the most talented guy in that backfield. Can you trust him in this game? Pittsburgh's defense, it's not all it was cracked up to be, but it's not terrible either. Where do you have Jonathan Taylor this week? How much faith do you have in him?
Oh, plenty. I mean, you mentioned not having the starting tackles. Obviously, that's not ideal either. But the Steelers' defense, much more of a juggernaut earlier in the year. I think you could probably relate a lot of that to the offense, at least holding on the ball a little bit more in the first half of the season. Either way, 23, 26, and 27 points allowed in their last 3 games. And now the Colts are rolling, and they're rolling with Jonathan Taylor as their featured back. For the first time all season, Jordan Wilkins did not play a single offensive snap in Week 15. This is finally a 2 RB backfield, and we can live with that in fantasy land. I mean, look, Taylor, he's got 35 to 36 targets. We know he can catch the ball now, which is great. That was a concern. Nyheim Hines isn't going anywhere. He is their pass down back. But just the fact that Taylor is now the undisputed early down and goal line back in this, not high flying, but at least a pretty good Colts offense, we got to feel good about that. He is a legit top 10 option at the position. And also credit to him for just playing a lot better recently. This has not really been a fluky stretch for him at all. In weeks 1 through 10, he only forced 9 missed tackles on rush attempts. Weeks 11 through 15, 22 forced missed tackles on carries alone. So Jonathan Taylor playing much better football and accordingly getting a much bigger role. I am fine firing him up as a legit top 10 option at the position. I've got a few start sit questions with him where it's close, but generally Jonathan Taylor should be in each and every fantasy football starting lineup out there.
Speaking of Jonathan Taylor, looking at the props tool, and I see Jonathan Taylor 15.5 receiving yards. And I think to myself, Jonathan Taylor, more athletic than most of the players on the Pittsburgh Steelers, particularly at the linebacker position. Give me Jonathan Taylor. It's minus 110. Normally props minus 120, so you're getting a pretty good price there, over 15.5. And if you have the same kind of appetite on the other side, James Conner, his prop is 12.5 on receiving yards. Overall, not a ton I like here. And if you really are feeling dangerous, Deontay Johnson, I mean, he's got to bounce back at some point, right? He can't drop every single pass he's thrown. And they will need to throw him the ball. He's their best offensive weapon. All right, we are cruising towards Week 16 kickoff. We've got about 45 minutes to go. We're going to talk some start-sit. It's never been more important than it is today, so you'll want to make sure you stick around and listen to Ian Hartitz. We'll be back in about 60 seconds on the PFF Live pregame show.
Back again. We did cornerbacks earlier. We're going to move closer to the line of scrimmage now to the linebacking group, where it's a fairly deep class. We'll kick it off at number 5, where North Carolina linebacker Chaz Surratt checks in. He already has 33 pressures this year as an off-ball linebacker, the best blitzer at the linebacker position in college football so far this year. And while he had missed tackles early in his career when he switched from quarterback to linebacker, he's only missed 1 tackle in his final 5 games this season. At number 4, it's Zaven Collins from Tulsa, the monster, 6'4", 260 pounds. He's been the best linebacker play-for-play in college football this season, a 91.2 overall grade. He can really do it all. At number 3, it's Missouri linebacker Nick Bolton. Multiple productive seasons there in the SEC. Hits like an absolute brick. 44 stops this year to lead the SEC, 54 stops a year prior. At number 2, it's the Butkus Award winner from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, an undersized guy, only checking in around 220 pounds, but he is about the ideal coverage linebacker that you'll see coming into the NFL. He plays slot for Notre Dame. He plays overhang. He does a ton of different roles in their defense. He is your modern hybrid coverage player that defenses covet now in the NFL. And at number 1, it's Micah Parsons, one of the best linebackers we've ever graded, coming out of Penn State, around 245 pounds, runs reportedly in the 4.4s, and earned a 94.8 run defense grade as a true sophomore back in 2019 before opting out this year. Second highest we've ever seen.
If there is one week that you needed to tune in for the start-sit segment, it is this week. Ian, I'm one of those people. I need your help here. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Who are you starting and who are you sitting?
Pretty much every quarterback starts-sit question I've got this week has got Jalen Hurts in it, and the answer is the same. Start Jalen Hurts. The only 3 guys I've had ranked ahead of him: Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray. I understand Kyler didn't work out ideally, but look, truly, it's Kyler, Lamar, and Jalen Hurts that have just these fantasy football cheat codes of a rushing workload, just now facing the Cowboys defense that has allowed the most yards before contact per rush. Smash bot of all smash bots. Get Jalen Hurts in starting lineups as a true top 4 quarterback. I am sitting Russell Wilson in most cases. He's my QB 11. You can't say you're going to outright bench the guy. You'll see some funny responses. But Russell Wilson, look, we've just seen enough before. They only have 1 completion of over 20-plus yards over the past 2 weeks. We just haven't seen them really creating these sort of big plays. I'm concerned about, his just kind of refusal to try to attack Jalen Ramsey in the past. And against this Rams defense, that's given him some troubles. Not an easy matchup by any stretch of the imagination. It's weird we've gotten to this point, but Championship Sunday, you do not need Russell Wilson in your starting lineups.
How far the mighty have fallen, man. I mean, the first 5 weeks of the season, this guy looked like an absolute league winner. We've gotten all the way to the end of the season. It's Jalen Hurts who's taking my team, and along with a lot of other teams, all the way to the championship. Let's move on to the next couple of positions, some guys that you are starting and a few that you are fading this week.
Yeah, one guy that's been on the wrong side of this equation for most years, Melvin Gordon, but he is someone I am looking to start this week because look, with the Broncos, when Philip Lindsay has missed time, they have featured Melvin Gordon. When Gordon misses time, it's a split committee between Lindsay and Freeman. So we're looking at a running back that's looking at 80% plus snaps and potential for 20 touches. I know the Chargers at full strength are a good defense, but now we take away Joey Bosa from that front 7. I think we can start Melvin Gordon with confidence. Excuse me. I am going to be sitting Wayne Gallman, pretty much anyone from from this Giants team. It's just too crowded. Dion freaking Lewis vultured a goal line touchdown from this group in the recent past. So if it was Gallman getting these 15, 20 carries, okay, we could kind of wrap our heads around it. But there's too much uncertainty there with both Alfred Morris and Dion Lewis stealing away touches. Stay away from the Giants as a whole. At wide receiver, we talked about this Houston Texans offense. Kiki, Cooks, even Chad Hansen. Do not be afraid to go with these guys over similar ranked players. I think Cooks in particular, top 20 option among all wide receivers. I will be sitting Juju Smith-Schuster. We've talked about him and joked about him being the Ezekiel Elliott of the slot wide receiver position. And I just think, with their season more and more on the line, it's Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, than everybody else. If you're in a full PPR, I get it. But even then, we're talking about, a distant wide receiver 3. And then at the tight end position, we are starting Logan Thomas. Guy's been playing his ass off lately, and he's actually one of the few tight ends in the league that can maybe get you some passing yards or rush attempts because he is that good of an athlete. And by the way, Logan Thomas playing, college quarterback, that's becoming the new Chris Hogan, used to play lacrosse. Keep an eye out for that on the broadcast. And finally, we are sitting the Rams tight ends, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee. They've each, popped off at different points throughout the year, but just one of these situations like Houston, like Seattle, like Philly to an extent, when both guys are healthy, very hard to see much of a ceiling for either. Just this Seattle Rams game in general, not the exactly, high-scoring, fantasy-friendly spot that we're looking to target.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That game has so much riding on it, but from a fantasy perspective, there's probably a lot of players that you would normally be starting that you're having some second thoughts about, or at least not as confident about them going off. As we talked about with Jalen Hurts, there are some other situations that we'll talk about here in a second coming up in this next segment, with Zeke Elliott now playing. What to do with Zeke, what to do with Tony Pollard. So we'll have some more for you in just a second, Ian. We're going to talk about that game as well as Seahawks and Rams coming up in about 60 seconds on the PFF pregame show. The live PFF pregame show will be right back. In the meantime, going to help you with any start-sit questions that you have at wide receiver. If you're still playing, these obviously matter a whole heck of a lot. Go to PFF.com, get an Edge subscription. You can get all of these rankings plus the projection, strength of schedule, and a whole lot more. PFF Edge subscription. And if you want the props tool and the betting dashboards, get an Elite subscription. Anyways, here we go. Wide receivers consensus rank on PFF.com. I'm going to go from 10 onward. At number 10, Robert Woods, followed by Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Marvin Jones Jr., Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Cooper Kupp, and then DJ Moore. Next, we have Brandon Cooks, followed by Corey Davis, Tyler Lockett, Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, Marquise Hollywood Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Juju, Cole Beasley, and Russell Gage. I'm going to give you 10 more here. Curtis Samuel, T. Higgins, Jacoby Myers, DJ Chark, Chase Claypool, T.Y. Hilton, Kiki QT, Sterling Shepard, and Jamison Crowder. For all of these, plus a heck of a lot more, get an Edge subscription at PFF.com. And now, back to the PFF Live pregame show.
Welcome back to the Week 16 PFF Live pregame show. We talked about Mitchell Trubisky potentially getting a new deal. We're going to talk about another young quarterback trying to lock up another chance, and that's Drew Lock himself. The Denver Broncos going to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. Chargers are a 2.5-point favorite, total at 47. There are some interesting inactives here for the Chargers. No Joey Bosa. Adam Schefter reporting that Keenan Allen's not going to be playing. Hunter Henry, he was dead. He rose again. He's dead. He's down. Denver, no Philip Lindsay, no Bradley Chubb. I'm very torn here. On the list here, you'll see that I took the Chargers. I expected Keenan Allen to play. I'm a little disappointed that he's not. Where are you leaning?
The number's now down to 2.5. I also like the Chargers. Look, this is a significantly better quarterback, and I think Justin Herbert's been more encouraging, like extremely encouraging, than he's been elite this year. But we're talking about the difference between Drew Lock and Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert playing, and honestly, they lost the first game, right? But they had a commanding lead of that game. Obviously, all the Chargers nonsense can happen at the end. But I think Denver's reassurance that their head coach is coming back for 2021, combined with having just a really rough passing game, I think is going to be enough. to get the Chargers to be the right side in this game, especially if you can get the number beneath 3.
Yeah, we know, play under pressure. It's unstable. It's not predictive. It's volatile. It's noisy. We've been using that to kind of hammer the Justin Herbert expectations a little bit all season long. On the other hand, sometimes it can, point to just a failing of a player. And right now, Drew Lock under pressure is just an abomination. The guy has a PFF grade of 25. He's got a passer rating of 29, which is 10 points lower than if he just took the ball and threw it off the field every time he was pressured instead.
Which he has, I mean, to be fair to him,
sometimes,
number of times.
Those have been the better plays than when he's been under pressure.
It's really what you hope for.
Right, unless Drew Lock can actually start to play with some degree of viability when he's pressured, and no Joey Bosa obviously helps that. But if he can't do that, they can't win a game like this.
Well, and there's good players in the secondary for the Chargers. It's not, obviously that's not like the be-all, end-all, but, Denver does have pretty good weapons on the outside. But, the Chargers are not slouches back there. So that, to me, I think that makes the handicap a little bit less in Denver's favor than normal.
Yeah, I mean, the disparity at quarterback is just massive. Drew Lock's PFF grade this season ranks 34th among all quarterbacks. In case you're wondering, there are 32 NFL teams, so 32 starting quarterbacks. I think that kind of points to Drew Lock probably not being a starter for your team if you want to win football games. Justin Herbert, as you mentioned, a lot of that really encouraging play, it's not without some warts. But that's a far cry from being Drew Lock, who's just totally wart covered. 17th is Justin Herbert's PFF grade rank. Mentioned no Joey Bosa. He's our 3rd highest graded edge defender this year, so that is certainly a loss. All right, it has come full circle. Ian has been dogging Melvin Gordon for the entire year, to spite me in some ways, and now Melvin Gordon is a guy that you are a proponent of, dare I say, encouraging
tables have turned.
People to play Melvin Gordon. Where do you have him ranked this week? Who are you playing him over? And are there any other players on this Chargers team that you're thinking of firing up now without Keenan Allen playing?
How the turns tables, exactly. Yeah, Melvin Gordon, he is my RB16 on the week. It's just opportunity based. I mean, this is why we had Tony Pollard as an RB1 last week when it happened out of the blue. Whatever you think of Melvin Gordon's talent, when Phillip Lindsay is sidelined, the Broncos give him a legit 3-down roll. Also got the revenge game storyline going on. Everyone's got to love that. But truly, this is just based on the fact that Melvin Gordon, with Phillip Lindsay's sideline, has been getting that true bell cow, 80% snaps, 20 potential plus carries. And now he's facing a Chargers defense that, full strength, they're pretty awesome, but you take away Joey Bosa, man, that might be one of the most impactful inactives of the entire week. So with that in mind, I am going Melvin Gordon ahead of guys like Kareem Hunt, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson. Kareem Hunt, maybe I get it. If you're full PPR, I would probably go Hunt over him, but it's truly a conversation. On the Chargers side of the ball, no Keenan Allen's looking like so. Tyron Johnson, Jalen Guyton, these guys are solid, wide receiver 3s again. Also, don't sleep on Donald Parham, particularly in DFS. He is pretty much a free square at 2,500 at the tight end position. Hunter Henry's on the COVID list, so hey, there is a 0.4 with these low-priced tight ends. But if you really want to try to build some stacks around Mahomes and these Chiefs, I found a good way to do it. Treat Travis Kelce as a receiver, just as your flex option. I mean, the guy is a top 5 dude in receiving yards just among any position this year. Put Parham there at the tight end, and that will kind of help you fill out the rest of the line, because it's expensive getting Mahomes, Tyreek, Kelce, all those guys in the lineup. Donald Parham gives you that sort of cost-saving salary cap flexibility you need.
Justin Herbert, where do you have him ranked? Is he locked in as a QB1 this week?
Yeah, he's my QB10, so I have him behind Ryan Tannehill, ahead of Russell Wilson, ahead of Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins, some of these guys I've already been playing out there. But yeah, he's been doing it all season long. And what was interesting last week, I mean, it almost seemed like there was a switch hit in his head, because with Austin Eckler in the lineup, we'd seen his average target depth plummet. He just wasn't throwing downfield as often. Single game high average target depth last week. Again, I don't know if it was Eckler being hobbled around there. No Keenan Allen probably influenced that as well. But when Herbert is willing to go downfield and sling it, man, it's tough to stop him in fantasy land.
A couple of props that I'm looking at here on the PFF.com props tool. Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, they're under receptions. I talk about overs a lot because it's fun, but unders are a very sharp play. That's why you want to go to the props tool. You'll see a ton of unders with a lot of plus EV. Tim Patrick, 3.5, his receptions number. KJ Hamler, 2.5. Both of those are either plus money or even money, which is something that you like to see. Usually props are juiced minus 120. You got to bet 120 to win 100. Both of these guys could go under their prop, and you'll have a nice day. Fade the Drew Lock noise. That's the moral of the story.
George betting into the fact that the Chargers are going to be able to close this game out.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to come back to bite me. Okay, this game is one that I think we're all looking forward to, a Cowboys game that actually kind of means something here because the Eagles have a viable quarterback, finally. Now, it's interesting. Jalen Hurts, he's just a lot better than Carson Wentz. That doesn't mean Jalen Hurts is like the greatest quarterback on the planet, but I think it goes to show you how bad this division is, that he has come in, revitalized this team, and if they win this game and the football team can't pull it off against the Panthers, have a legit shot to win this division. A couple of numbers that really stuck out to me looking at the Eagles, and now it's a very small sample size, but their offense on first and second down went from third worst in the entire league with Carson Wentz at quarterback to 14th with Jalen Hurts. The simple fact that he gives you a rushing floor, that he plays with confidence, that he doesn't poop himself every time things don't go well, that he can throw the ball accurately at sometimes to players that are open, that makes a big difference. And that's why I'm rolling with the Eagles -3. They need to win this game. They have the better team and the better quarterback.
I put in my pick yesterday, which is Eagles -3. Part of it is a hedge. I have exposure to all of the NFC East teams.
No one cares about your personal hedges. Can we make that very clear?
But I will say, no one does care. No one cares about anybody's fantasy team or their personal hedges. But I will say this. Watching the Arizona Cardinals go about their business yesterday makes me a little bit more worried about Philadelphia giving up 33 points to that team last week. So I know Darius Slay's out. I know the Cowboys are weaker at the quarterback position than the Cardinals are. But that would give me pause. On the road, fast track, bad defense for Philadelphia. Dallas, I think, just has to be a road bump as a defense for this one to be closer than people are imagining it being.
And Dallas's offense has looked a lot more like we thought it would look with no Dak Prescott over the last few weeks. Yeah. I think the Jalen Hurts thing is interesting because you make a great point, right? That Carson Wentz was just such a disaster that Jalen Hurts being anything north of viable makes a huge difference, makes this team a completely different proposition. But it feels like when you add that to the fact that he brings that high rushing floor, we're getting a little bit carried away with just how good and how bad he's actually been, right? His overall PFF, or his passing grade from PFF is 51.
Yep.
That's not good. That's like
took 6 sacks last week after taking none the week before.
Exactly. That's like south of Trubisky. That's south of some bad quarterbacks. Also, he's had 5 turnover-worthy plays, and those haven't yet come back to bite him. Now, they might not this week because Dallas is terrible on defense, but those are like an accident waiting to happen. If he suddenly has 1 or 2 turnovers in the game, as well as that sort of overall grade of 51, suddenly he's not, the giant leap forward in production that we've been used to.
I think Mike Quinn is in the control room right now thinking of a different T-shirt that says anything north of viable, and maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick's face, like right there. I feel like that's a good idea for a T-shirt, and I think Fitz would have both of these teams in the playoffs.
Speaking of no one caring about anyone's fantasy team, a lot of fantasy teams out there with Zeke Elliott, and a reason that I like the Eagles is that Zeke Elliott is going to be back on the field, and his dumpy ass is going to be trying to run the ball through non-existent holes here, and maybe they give Tony Pollard a chance to help them win the football game, but there's a pretty good chance they probably ride Zeke right into the ground, and that really hurts the Dallas Cowboys offense. So Ian, given that you may be a team that somehow has made it to the championship with Zeke Elliott, let's say you have Tony Pollard, you played him last week, what are you doing with Zeke? Where do you have him ranked? Is Pollard even a viable option as an RB2? What are you doing with this backfield?
I got Zeke as my RB21, Pollard as my RB31. Yeah, I mean, I think if all of us were running the Cowboys and had no other, ulterior motives, we would all want to give Tony Pollard more touches. That's not the reality. Cowboys have 90 million reasons to continue to feature Elliott as their number 1 running back, even if Pollard, who is PFF's number 1 back in missed forced tackles per carry and yards after contact per rush over the past 2 seasons. So just one of these situations, again, we follow opportunity more than talent in fantasy land. Unfortunately, Zeke is going to be in there, and we're looking at probably the 60-40 split that they're kind of working with before, but it's a volatile situation. I mean, again, we are guessing. It's always tough to know what exactly a player's role is going to be like coming off of injuries. So if you have anybody that's even moderately ranked the same as these guys, I don't think it's a bad call. Just go with the other guy. I do have Zeke ahead of the Washington football team runners, Darrell Henderson, Giovanni Bernard, but again, I'm not going out on too much of a limb here with what I'm willing to do with Zeke. Where Pollard, amazing last week. I'm happy. Hopefully you all started him and you got that overall RB1 performance, but it's just a matter of workload and touches. As great as he is, 8 to 10 touches, it's impossible to rank him, as more than a top 30 option because it's just so hard for him to get the sort of production that other running backs will have twice the opportunity to do so. So, Cowboys offense, I'm really trying to stay away in general. We've seen them look competent for 12 quarters in the post-Dak era. Bengals, Vikings, 49ers, all bottom 8 defenses in pressure rate. The Eagles are number 4. I think a lot of people are looking at this banged up secondary and saying, oh, maybe they can do something. I don't know if Dalton's going to even have the time to look downfield or if this run game's going to be able to get started off the block. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts, hasn't exactly been the greatest passer so far. But, again, I feel like this happens every 2 or 3 weeks. We're just giving this Cowboys team far too much benefit of the doubt when all they've done all season long is pretty much screw us. So give me the Eagles big, and, try to avoid these Cowboys if you can.
Jalen Hurts, you mentioned this in the last segment. He's locked in as a must start. You have him where? At quarterback 5 this week?
QB4, actually. Unless you have Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers at this point, my answer is Jalen Hurts.
Pretty simple. Simple as that. Jalen Hurts obviously gives you the rushing floor, and they don't dock you for uncatchable passes in fantasy, which is a beautiful thing. I will be starting Jalen Hurts. All right, let's go to the Rams and the Seahawks. This is a massive game, obviously, for the NFC West implications. The Seahawks still in it for the number 1 seed. The Rams, if they lose, could be playing just to make the playoffs next week against Arizona. If Chicago manages to figure some things out and not win a game against Jacksonville. So this is a massive game. The Seahawks are now 1-point favorite. Obviously, those things don't really matter unless you get past 3. Seahawks are a 10th ranked team in our power ratings. The Rams are number 9. Talk about a game where matchups are going to really determine this thing. The matchup everyone is waiting for is Jalen Ramsey versus DK Metcalf. Do they match up again? 2 targets in Jalen Ramsey's coverage against DK Metcalf their first time around. 0 catches. I'm going to go with Ramsey winning once again. I will take the Rams and Sean McVay.
Wow. So you're taking defense being a sort of consistent.
I said the Rams and Sean McVay.
Okay. Because I think Metcalf will respond and have a pretty good game today. And this is a huge game. Kudos to our colleague Timo Riske, who showed that yesterday Arizona losing actually made it harder on the Rams to make the playoffs, even though via the tiebreakers and that kind of thing. So I just don't trust Jared Goff in this spot, and I think that Seattle's defense has they showed over the past few weeks that they're just another defense. They're not a second level disaster like anybody else is. And then the first matchup they stayed on the tracks, right? So to me, what you're banking on in this game is Russell Wilson to play like Russell Wilson, and that's the best bet in this entire thing. So while I don't know, I would probably take Seattle here.
You're passing, though.
Well, I know.
Just to make it clear, it should be very clear. You're passing the game. I will put my money where my mouth is and take the Rams.
I don't trust Jared Goff either, but I don't think you need to be able to buy into the Rams in this game. The Jets were able to absolutely destroy that Rams offensive line up front.
I'm sorry, who?
The Jets, exactly.
Okay,
but look at Seattle's defensive line. It doesn't have the horses to do the same thing to the Rams offensive line that the Jets did. At which point, as soon as you give them just that platform of viability, the Rams offense will be okay. When that offensive line collapses around them, they literally cannot function. And that's what the Jets did to them. So Goff should be okay, right? Not good, not great, but regular Jared Goff, not like completely non-viable Jared Goff. And then the other side of the ball, this Rams defense caused Russell Wilson all kinds of problems the first time around. Not by pressuring him, not by, literally causing him to pause a beat and try and figure out what the hell he was looking at before he put the ball anywhere. Lowest PFF grade of the season. If they get even halfway towards doing that again, I think the Rams just match up well with the Seattle team.
I'm taking the offensive side of the ledger in any sort of measure of this will happen again.
Sure.
If an offense dominates a defense, I'll probably come back and say that's more likely to happen than a defense dominating an offense in one set. And the other thing is, I'll kind of push back. Since Carlos Dunlap left this city and got the Skyline Chili out of his system, he's been a really usable defensive player for Seattle this year. Jamal Adams is also becoming a usable player.
A pass rusher.
Yeah, exactly. So and Goff is one of the few quarterbacks who's consistently worse than what you would expect when facing pressure. So I think there are some fundamental differences in the way LA is going to have to hide Goff in this game to win.
Sean McVay, when he goes to sleep at night, when he went to sleep on Christmas Eve, you know what he was thinking about? Under the tree will be the Seahawks defense. That beautiful cover 3 that I'm just going to slice and dice to my heart's content. This is going to be a fascinating game. To your point, I mean, Russell Wilson, how elite does he need to be to win this game? Like, you can't get 80% of Russell Wilson's elite play and win this game, can you?
No, but you... I do think that there are ways in which LA melts down in this game and Seattle wins it by like 2018, 2019 Seattle-ian forms, right? Like they were, we got so attuned to them winning games because Russell was brilliant that we forgot that for 2 years they were making the playoffs in this division by being like this ground and pound team that wins ugly games. Now, they weren't doing it against the Rams. The Rams have had their number for a couple of years here, but I do think there's 2 paths to winning. There's Goff being terrible and the Seahawks holding on for dear life at home, and there's Russ being brilliant, and I don't think that the game that they previously played in LA makes the chances of Russ being brilliant any less than normally.
It does just feel like a matchup, though, that the Rams have. They match up well against Seattle. You know the way that the Ravens can't beat the Chiefs right now, right? They just, it's a bad schematic matchup. This feels like the Rams just match up really well against Seattle, and for that, I think you back them.
I'm shocked that this level of disagreement is happening in a game that is literally a pick'em. That's surprising. It's surprising absolutely no one. We talked about this earlier, and Ian, there are plenty of players in this game that have carried people to this point in the season. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf. What are you doing with some of these key players? We talked about Russell Wilson, but also maybe the Rams backfield, because Cam Akers is not playing. Does that give Darrell Henderson a chance to shine in this game? Where do you have him ranked?
He's right on that RB2 borderline. I'm hesitant putting him really in the top 20. He has been the lead back with Akers out of the picture. We've seen 5 games where the Rams have given Akers fewer than 5 snaps, and 4 of those 5 games, Henderson was the touch leader, and he led the way in snaps in each of the past 2. But since their bye week, he had a quad injury. He hasn't quite looked like the same, and we know they love Malcolm Brown, so it's a little bit iffy. And yeah, I'm a little worried about the potential for Jared Goff to just do Jared Goff things. Kind of lost in Russell Wilson looking human over the past few weeks. This reality, the Rams just lost to the freaking Jets. Like, these guys are not playing anything resembling their best ball of the year. And I think if you just weigh Jared Goff versus Russell Wilson, clearly we're all taking Russell Wilson, even if he hasn't been playing at his highest level recently. So yeah, it's not a good matchup, but man, we sit here almost every week and we say defenses don't matter, running backs don't matter. All of a sudden, in a matchup with such a big quarterback discrepancy, I think we're giving the Rams a little bit too much credit. So, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, I think there's, that passing game is condensed enough around them to keep them in play. But, just really anyone in this spot, just kind of keep your expectations and contain them pretty much is the word I was looking for. But I will say, I've gotten some just weird start sick. One person asked me this morning, Russell Gage or DK Metcalf, like, come on, everybody. I understand the Ramsey matchup is scary. We have never seen someone truly stop DK Metcalf other than Russell Wilson not giving him enough opportunities. So Patrick Peterson, Jalen Ramsey, even James Bradbury a little bit. These bigger body corners match up a little better with Metcalf. But, until we see a game where Metcalf actually gets 8 or 10 targets and doesn't produce with it, I'm going to, stay away from saying anybody can check this dude. When Gilmore couldn't do it, I lost faith in anyone else. Credit to Ramsey for doing well this year. I mean, Metcalf in his direct coverage last year, 6 catches on 6 targets for, I believe, 75 yards. So, just remember, we've seen this matchup more than once, and we've seen Metcalf roast just about anybody. Do not leave this dude out of your fantasy lineups, please.
Yeah, that may be overthinking it just a tad. I say that over here, and I'm picking up and dropping running backs like every 5 minutes. So who knows? Darrell Henderson just made it on my team after that spirited conversation. Again, you can go to PFF.com and check out all the projections and the different rankings. We are about 20 minutes from Week 16 kicking off. We're going to talk about the upside plays that you need to have in your DFS lineups and Ian's helicopter pick of the week in about 60 seconds. Stay right here.
Last but not least on our defensive position rankings here is the edge class. It is deep and full of athletes. At number 5, we have Georgia outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari. Only around 240 pounds, but he has great burst, great bend, and his 87.7 pass rushing grade this season led all players in the SEC, and he's still young, only a redshirt sophomore. At number 4, one of the biggest risers in this year's class, Oklahoma's Nick Bonito. Utterly dominant on a play-for-play basis this season, generated pressures on over 25 of his pass rushing snaps, his 93.3 pass rushing grade, the highest in college football. At number 3, it's Carlos Basham from Wake Forest. This one's a traits projection. He did not have the best year that we thought he would this year, but 6'5", 285 pounds, and he is explosive off the edge. As a sophomore and junior there at Wake Forest, generated 112 pressures between those 2 seasons. At number 2, it's a guy we haven't seen play this fall, Greg Rousseau from Miami. As a redshirt freshman, he had 16 sacks, has ridiculous length, a ridiculous build, only played around 247 pounds back in 2019. He said he could get up into the 270s. The guy is a true freak of nature. And at number 1, it is Kwity Paye from Michigan. The burst and bend at his size is special, and we saw him really turn it on this year after kind of teasing it for his first 3 years at Michigan. 22 pressures through 4 games before getting hurt. He looks like the total package of what you want in terms of run defender, power player, off the edge in the NFL.
Only a couple more weeks to play full slate DFS, and Ian Hartitz is going to help us figure out which guys people might be sleeping on a little bit, under 10% projected ownership, not in the top 5, 10 of their pricing at their position, but have a chance to go off and win you a ton of money. Ian, there are a couple guys on here that I've been liking for a while. It's about time, week 16, about when you would expect them to go off.
Yeah, and like you said, can't have a projected ownership over 10%, not in the top 10 of or top 5 of their price rank as well. And Chris Carson at 6,400, I think fits that criteria. We just talked about it. Maybe the Seahawks get back to winning ugly, run first offense. And hey, last week we did see Carson get back to having that true 3 down, 70% plus snap roll. Carlos Hyde just happened to quote unquote vulture a 50-yard touchdown from him, but it was still the Chris Carson show. Not an ideal matchup against Aaron Donald and company, but you look at this whole range of 6,000 running backs. I think people are trying to get down the Kareem Hunt, Le'Veon Bell, even your Melvin Gordons of the world, or they're getting up to Austin Eckler, David Montgomery, Nick Chubb, and those guys. So you see that soft spot right in the middle. I think that's where you can kind of make some contrarian lineups. And then that same, just range, J.K. Dobbins at 6,200 makes a lot of sense as well. Talked about him just being the lead back for the Ravens in a matchup that they're projected to win by at least 1 score. I think Dobbins and Carson can be stacked with the Ravens and Seahawks defense respectively. Give yourself that extra oomph of upside. At the wide receiver position, kind of similar story where I like this 5K range because we're just seeing more ownership kind of at the lower and higher ranges of the position. But Amari Cooper at 5,700, again, gun to my head, I think the Eagles have their way with this one because I'm worried about Dalton fending off that pass rush. If they find a way how to hold off those pass rushers, though, we're looking at a banged up secondary. Amari Cooper has always been better at Jerry World. Just 5,700 for a true number 1 wide receiver like Cooper is far too cheap. And then finally, this one scares me, but hear me out. Sammy Watkins at 5K, banged up Tyreek Hill. Because Tyreek Hill is banged up, not many people are, everyone's going down from Tyreek Hill all the way down to Mecole Hardman at 3,100. I understand it, but Watkins, coming back from the injury, he's been healthy. He literally hurdled a dude last week, which was good to see. And hey, Sammy Watkins, week 1 and in the playoffs. That's when this dude balls out. I know we're in the fantasy playoffs, but maybe, in Watkins, lizard mentality, whatever the hell that dude's talking about on Twitter half the time, maybe week 16 qualifies for him. So Watkins at 5K against the league's second worst defense in PPR points allowed per game to wide receivers, I think could go off. I mean, look, the Chiefs already air the ball out to their heart's desires. Now you take away Clyde from that equation. I think it makes sense to let Patrick Mahomes throw as much as possible. Yes, Kelsey's going to get his, but if Tyreek is in fact limited, Watkins could easily be a number 2 target in this pass game. So Chris Carson, J.K. Dobbins, Amari Cooper, and Sammy Watkins.
I can just see the headlines now. Tomorrow morning, the Lizard King reigns supreme. That is the best way to cap off 2020, to win your fantasy championship or a DFS tournament because the Lizard King showed up for you right when you needed him most. We are 11 minutes, I guess, to kick off here. We've got 2 games left. We've got the football team trying to keep their NFC East title hopes alive, and then, of course, a Sunday night matchup that you don't want to miss. Stay with us. 60 seconds. We'll be right back.
The PFF pregame show is going to be right back. While we're waiting, I'm going to help you with your start-sit decisions by going over the PFF consensus rank for running backs on PFF.com. You can get all of these plus the individual ranks by our rankers, projections, strength of schedule metrics, all of the premium content at PFF with an Edge subscription. But for now, you're just trying to figure out which running back to start. So here we go. I'm going to go straight down the list from 1 to 30. Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, Dalvin Cook was 5. Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders at 10. David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, Leonard Fournette, Mike Davis is at 15. Le'Veon Bell, Jeff Wilson Jr., what a day he had. Chris Carson, J.K. Dobbins, J.D. McKissick at 20. Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, who knows how much run he'll get with Zeke playing. Kenyon Drake, Giovanni Bernard, Chase Edmonds was at 25. He went out early in that game. Wayne Gallman, Devin Singletary, Nyheim Hines, Zach Moss, James White is at 30, and I'll give you 5 more for fun. Sony Michel, Latavius Murray, Darrell Henderson, Frank Gore, and Salvon Ahmed. Go to PFF.com, get a PFF Edge subscription to see all these rankings plus a lot more. And now, back to the Week 16 PFF Live pregame show.
We've got 10 minutes, and then Week 16 is off and running in a game that actually matters here, the Ron Rivera revenge game. The Carolina Panthers, no Christian McCaffrey. They're going to Washington to play the football team with no Alex Smith, no Terry McLaurin, and Dwayne Haskins, he's still in the strip club without a mask. So that leaves you, no, I'm just kidding. Dwayne Haskins is actually going to play in this game, shockingly. He's their starting quarterback. Antonio Gibson is back in this game. This is a pick, total at 42. I look at this game and I go, one team really needs to win. The other team really needs to lose, actually, to get themselves a better draft pick because the Panthers have a lot of different areas where they need to improve. Give me the football team.
I would normally think that, except for Dwayne Haskins is so bad that I don't know.
Has he earned the H back yet?
No. Terry McLaurin doubtful for this game, I think, is big. It also plays into the Antonio Gibson thing. It's not only a Ron Rivera revenge game, it's a Thomas Davis revenge game. Backup linebacker for the Washington football team. So there's a ton on the line here. Washington can win the division if the Giants go down as a double-digit underdog today to the Ravens, and they win this game. So it is humongous, considering I don't think you want to play Jalen Hurts Week 17 for a chance at the division. So there's a ton of motivation
Not with
here.
Dwayne Haskins.
But we saw yesterday, just because a team needs a game to needs a game for the playoffs, and the other team has very little to play for, that doesn't necessarily mean that team's going to deliver. Looking at you, Arizona, looking at you, Miami, at least against the spread. So I don't know. I passed on this one because it's just Haskins, man. I can't do it.
Yeah, I hate everything about it for all those reasons, but I'm going to lean Washington. I think they do have something to play for. They've also got a defense that can cause Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers offense all kinds of problems. They're top 10 in pressure rate this season and in passer rating allowed, top 5 in yards per play. That's a good defense beyond even just the front four. Even with Dwayne Haskins at quarterback, I'm going to lean Washington.
Yeah, it's funny. So when we were making our picks last night, I'm going through and I'm reading everything I can on the Washington injury stuff because there's a ton of things. I'm like, well, it looks like Alex Smith is going to play. He has a little leg pain. Alex Smith's played through plenty of leg issues before. He must certainly be playing.
He doesn't have a calf. How can it be strained?
So I assumed Alex Smith was going to play. If Alex Smith is playing in this game, you feel so much more confident because you think that he can manage the team. With Dwayne Haskins, there's just so much variance there, right? Yeah. Like, will he even make it back after halftime? Does he, go out and I don't know. There's a lot of variance there. No Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, one of the most underrated wide receivers in this league. Like, if you're redrafting the past 2 classes, Terry McLaurin is a guy that you're probably considering in the top 3 there. He's an absolute stud, has been saddled with terrible quarterback play for the majority of his career. Not having him is a massive, massive loss.
Although Washington's receivers, complementary receivers, have played better down the stretch. Yes. Sims, Logan Thomas. Yeah, and even the running backs are all kind of contributing in their sort of own way. Offensive line's played okay as well. Panthers defense, if you could pick the receiver for Washington that's going to have a decent game, you might win DFS this week because there is a game on that field that some receiver for Washington is going to play well.
Antonio Gibson. Which brings me to Ian Hartitz. This has been one of the most paralyzing backfields in all of fantasy football. Antonio Gibson is back. I think this one really flew under the radar. I was not expecting him to be back. He is back. McKissick banged up. Peyton Barber laying in wait to vulture touchdowns. How are you handling this Washington backfield? Where do you have these guys ranked this week?
I got Gibson and McKissick as low-end RB2s. I do have Gibson just a hair ahead, but they're the RB22 and 23 for me. Look, Gibson, we could never get rid of McKissick when Gibson was healthy, and I just don't know that in his first game coming back from this toe injury that he's going to be healthy enough to really take control of the backfield. We haven't seen that happen all year. I just don't see that happening in this spot. Maybe without McLaurin, both guys will get enhanced roles. I can definitely see that happening with McKissick. They're so comfortable using him in the slot or out wide. He has more targets than any running back lined up as a true receiver this season. Wouldn't be shocked if both guys were able to put up solid enough performances, but we just can't treat Gibson as that borderline RB1 that he was becoming before injury, because again, McKissick is going to be the guy getting all those targets. To Eric's point, about there being one receiver in this game was probably going to stand out. I do think Logan Thomas probably has the best chance of that. He's my tight end 6 on the week. Cam Sims, Isaiah Wright, and these guys are getting, Antonio Gandy Golden. He's back this week. I don't know. It's been so just up and down between these guys outside Terry McLaurin all year long. I do think it makes sense. The tight end and the running backs end up getting the bulk of the targets in this one.
What about the Panthers side of things? DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson have been pretty quality all year, and now you've got Mike Davis and his chance to really shine with no Christian McCaffrey. Where are these guys lining up for you?
Yeah, DJ Moore and Robbie, they're both kind of, the low-end wide receiver 2s they've been all season. We've seen DJ really emerge as, the field stretching option and kind of having the higher just range of outcomes. But Robbie has that higher floor that we just never really saw before from him in that Gaze offense. So hasn't, had the huge explosions I think we were kind of hoping for of a player of his caliber, but still anyone's idea of a solid wide receiver 2. And Mike Davis, look, without McCaffrey, he has truly been a borderline RB1 more weeks than not. I have Mike Davis as my RB14 on the week, ahead of Chris Carson, ahead of Melvin Gordon. Keep him in the starting lineups, everybody. I know he hasn't been, particularly as good as Christian McCaffrey. Not many running backs are. We're still looking at one of the top 5 running backs in the league in terms of total forced missed tackles this year. So hopefully Mike Davis played his way into a decent little contract for himself next year. I'm not saying he should be, one of the top 10 most featured backs in the league, but truly anyone's idea of a great running back this year.
And a great game is actually being played on Sunday Night Football for the first time in what feels like a couple of weeks. That's what the Giants on Sunday Night Football will do to you, by the way. Packers at home, 3-point favorite against the Titans, our 8th ranked team according to PFF ELO. Packers are our 5th ranked team. Packers a 3-point favorite, as I said, 53.5 is the total. 30 degrees, snow showers, 11 mile-per-hour winds brings the wind chill down to about 20 degrees. Cold game. Rodgers' revenge tour. A lot of great narratives here. That being said, I think the Titans are a pretty good football team. I will take Tennessee, and I'm fading the weather being a huge factor. I'll take the over as well.
The over is a little bit more tenuous for me, but I do think this is a spot where the live over is probably a solid play. Like if it gets to 3-0, like if they drive the length of field, kick a field goal, miss a field goal, something like that, I think the over is always going to be in play with this one. Both teams are slow. And if you get bad variance at the beginning of the game, it might be something like 27-20. But I do agree. One person that doesn't lack core strength is Derrick Henry. And the Packers said it before, I'll say it again. Very talented team, not a very tough team, especially on defense. I do think that and if the Titans are smart here, they'll see that the Packers are probably going to sell out to stop the run, and they'll run play action, throw the football around. They have 2 receivers now. Packers only have really 1 elite defensive back, at least at the corner position, and I think that they exploit the situation today.
Yeah, I'm all for the over as well. 2 quarterbacks with a PFF grade above 90. Rodgers is higher, but Derrick Henry has more help around him, right? He's got Derrick Henry, who they're going to want to hammer all day long. They've got those 2 receivers out wide. So while Ryan Tannehill might, not quite be at the level that Aaron Rodgers is, they, I think, have more weapons. They can take advantage of the fact that Green Bay is a little bit soft. They don't have the kind of bodies on defense that can stop a Derrick Henry or an A.J. Brown if they're running in the loose. So this is going to be fun.
I'm very excited. A chance for Aaron Rodgers to seal up the MVP here. He has another elite game on primetime. This is a huge game. I would expect that the Packers and LaFleur want to see that happen. I'm sure a lot of those weapons that Green Bay has will be used here, whether it's Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, Aaron Jones, all of those guys. And then on the other side of things, The Titans have great weapons as well with Corey Davis and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. They're all built for this weather. Yeah. So it should be one heck of a game. You're probably starting all of these guys, but I'll bring in Ian Hartitz anyways because I want to hear where you're leaning in this game and just how highly valued you have a lot of these skill players for both sides this week.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much starting everyone. Even the complimentary guys like Allen Lazard, who outsnapped MVS for the first time since he returned from injury last week. I think he's a viable, upside wide receiver 3 option. But yeah, Henry, Davis, A.J. Brown, all these guys, get them in your lineups. The 2 main points I would just kind of add on to what you guys were saying. Jair Alexander has not shadowed an individual receiver since week 7. They just been kind of keeping him on his side. So, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, I get it. Okay, A.J. Brown needs to be in your starting lineups. But Corey Davis, if it's close, I get it. But just don't, think that one of them's going to be shadowed by Jair Alexander. Probably not going to happen. And then Aaron Rodgers in this passing game, we've seen him look human twice this year against the Buccaneers and the Panthers. Titans don't have anything close to a pass rush that either of those teams can provide. I see Rodgers having all day to throw and making the most of it, as he's done for most of this year. Give me the Packers big.
Packers big. I've got 2 props for you guys to close this show out. Maybe I'll even add in a 3rd. Maybe even a 4th. Who knows? Go to PFF.com. You can see all the ones that I'm talking about. I'm not just making this stuff up. But you know how much I love the quarterback rushing prop. And both these quarterbacks, athleticism is underrated. Aaron Rodgers, the revenge tour continues. His over is 7.5. His total is 7.5. He goes over that at a nice little scamper. And then Ryan Tannehill, used to play wide receiver, 13.5 is his. He will go over that. Devontae Adams, 7.5 receptions. That's about as high of a reception total as you'll see. But there isn't a single player on the Tennessee Titans or in the state of Tennessee that could come close to covering Devontae Adams. So I like that over as well. And maybe a little Derrick Henry over receiving yards. It's cold. They'll get him involved. This has been the PFF pregame show for week 16. We thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back, of course, next week. Check out PFF.com for all the content that we're referencing and head to the @PFF Twitter account to enjoy the action this week. Have some fun. We'll see you guys later.